Chapter 1. Kidnapped. But why am I being pampered? Mikhail Sokolov had been captured before. Shot at? Yes. Ambushed? Frequently. Kidnapped by rival mafias? Practically a hobby at this point. But this? This was new. It had started like most bad decisions in his life, with a meeting he didn't want to attend. Just a negotiation, his father had said. Just don't stab anyone, his uncle had added. Mikhail had brought 3 knives anyway. The warehouse had been too quiet. No guards at the entrance, no tension in the air. Just silence. Thick, deliberate, wrong. He had stepped inside, already irritated. "Come out," he'd called, voice sharp. "If this is an ambush, at least make it interesting." The lights had flickered once. Then, gunshots. Precise, controlled, not aimed at him. At his men. Mikhail had barely had time to curse before shadows moved. Black-clad figures. Efficient. Silent. Deadly. Within seconds, his guards were down. Not dead, but disarmed. Unconscious. That was when he realized. This wasn't a fight. This was a collection. Mikhail had lunged forward anyway. Knife flashing, movements fast, brutal, elegant. He took down 2 men, slashed a third, kicked another into a steel crate. And then something cold pressed against the back of his neck. A voice followed. Low, calm, familiar. In a way that made something in his chest tighten without permission. Enough. Mikhail stilled. Slowly, he turned his head. And there he was. Viktor Volkov. The Enigma Don. The nightmare whispered across continents. The man his family had been at war with for years. Standing right behind him. Watching him like he'd just found something he'd been looking for his entire life. Mikhail narrowed his eyes. "If you're going to kill me, do it. I'm busy." Something strange flickered across Viktor's face. Relief. Not satisfaction, not triumph. Relief. "I found you," Viktor murmured. Mikhail frowned. "You've been knowing where I am. That's called a rivalry, idiot." Viktor didn't respond. He just raised a hand. And Mikhail's world went dark. "You were supposed to kill me an hour ago." Mikhail's voice was flat, unimpressed, and echoing slightly in the absurdly luxurious room he had woken up in. He sat tied to a chair, though tied was generous. The ropes were amateur at best. He'd already sliced halfway through them with the blade hidden in his sleeve. Across the room, Viktor Volkov was kneeling. Kneeling. Cleaning his boots. "You stepped in blood," Viktor said softly, wiping carefully with a pristine cloth. "It bothers me." Mikhail blinked slowly. "That's because you spilled it." "I know," Viktor replied, gaze warm. "So I'll take responsibility." Mikhail stared at him. This man had ordered massacres, burned entire operations to the ground, ended bloodlines. And now he was polishing his shoes like a devoted servant. "What?" Mikhail said finally, voice dangerously calm. "Is wrong with you?" Viktor looked up at him and smiled. Not cold, not mocking. Soft. "I've decided not to kill you. Obviously, I'm going to court you instead. Try again." Outside the room, Viktor's twin beta enforcers stood in silence. Leonid and Lev Volkov. Identical, deadly, currently questioning every life choice that had led them here. "He brought him flowers," Lev whispered. "They were knives," Leonid corrected. "Arranged like a bouquet, still covered in blood." "Still counts," Lev muttered. "I hate this job." Back inside. The rope snapped. Mikhail stood up. Fast. Smooth. Dangerous. In one swift movement, he closed the distance and pressed a knife against Viktor's throat. "Listen carefully, Don," he said, eyes cold. "I am not—" Viktor leaned into the blade. "Beautiful." Mikhail froze. "What?" "You look even prettier when you threaten me." There was a pause. A long, heavy pause. The kind where murder became a very reasonable option. Mikhail exhaled slowly. "I'm going to kill you." Viktor hummed softly. "You can try." Mikhail did. The knife moved, quick, precise, lethal. And Viktor caught his wrist. effortlessly. Careful, Victor said gently. You'll hurt yourself. I am trying to hurt you. And yet, Victor murmured, tightening his grip just enough to disarm him, you're still the one I'm worried about. Mikhail stared at him. This man was insane. No, worse. He was sincere. And that was far more dangerous. The first escape attempt lasted exactly 47 seconds. Mikhail slipped out through a window, scaled down a ledge, knocked out 2 guards, and sprinted toward the outer gate. Only to be caught. Not by guards. By Victor, who appeared in front of him like a ghost. You're fast, Victor said, almost pleased. Mikhail immediately turned to run the other way, arms wrapped around him. Warm, firm, unyielding. Got you, Victor murmured against his ear. Mikhail elbowed him in the ribs. Hard. Victor didn't even flinch. Let go of me. No. I will stab you. I know. Then let go. Victor tightened his hold slightly. No. He was tied again. Different room. Same problem. A week passed. And somehow, it got worse. Mikhail expected torture, interrogation, psychological warfare. Instead, he got, your meal, a guard said, placing down a tray that looked like it belonged in a 5-star restaurant. Mikhail stared at it. Where's the poison? There is no poison. Disappointing. You'll wear this, Victor said one evening, holding out silk clothing. Mikhail looked at it, then at him. Are you trying to dress me or seduce me? Yes. Pick one. No. Be gentle with him, Victor instructed the guards. Mikhail, standing right there, scoffed. Or what? You'll fire them? I'll replace them. With people who what? Treat me like glass? With people who understand your mind. Mikhail blinked. I'm going to stab you again. I'll clean your knife afterward. Another escape attempt. This time, Mikhail made it all the way to the main gates. Freedom was right there. Right there. And where? Victor's voice came from behind him, calm and amused. Do you think you're going? Mikhail didn't even turn around. Away from you. A pause. Or then, arms again. Always the arms. Strong, warm, inescapable. Mikhail groaned. Do you teleport or something? I pay attention, Victor replied simply. That's worse. By the end of the week, Mikhail had come to one terrifying conclusion. Viktor Volkov, feared Don, ruthless killer, monster of the underworld, was courting him. Seriously. Relentlessly. Unapologetically. And worst of all, he wasn't stopping. That night, as Mikhail sat on the edge of his bed, staring at yet another ridiculous gift, this time a dagger with his name engraved in gold, Victor appeared in the doorway. Silent. Watching. Soft. Are you done? Mikhail asked without looking up. Not yet. Mikhail sighed. With what? Victor stepped closer. Slow. Certain. With you. Mikhail finally looked at him. Annoyed, tired, slightly murderous. I hate you. Victor smiled. I know. And somehow, that only made it worse. Chapter 2. The most unhinged courtship ever. By the end of the first week, Mikhail had reached a conclusion. Viktor Volkov was not just insane. He was dangerously committed to that insanity. Which was exactly why Mikhail was currently standing in the middle of the estate courtyard, arms crossed, knife in hand, glaring at the man who had just ruined his life. Let's play a game, Victor said, calm as ever. Mikhail narrowed his eyes. I don't play games. You do today. Try me. Victor's lips curved slightly, something dark and fond flickering in his gaze. A mating run. Silence. Complete absolute silence. Somewhere in the distance, a guard choked. Mikhail blinked once. You've officially lost your mind. If I catch you, Victor continued smoothly, as if he hadn't just suggested the most unhinged thing imaginable. You let me court you, properly, openly, without interruption. Mikhail scoffed, already turning away. You won't even see me. Behind him, Victor smiled. The moment the signal was given, Mikhail ran. Not hesitated. Not planned? Ran. Straight into the dense forest surrounding the estate, boots hitting the ground hard, breath sharp, instincts screaming. He was fast. Always had been. Built for survival, for combat, for escape. Branches snapped underfoot as he darted through trees, weaving, cutting direction, already mapping exits in his head. And then he felt it. That pull. That instinctual, infuriating, biological nonsense that made his skin prickle and his heart slam against his ribs. Apex predator? No, Mikhail muttered under his breath. No, no, no. Behind him. Footsteps. Not rushed. Not frantic. Calm. Unhurried. Certain. Victor. You can run, darling, Victor called, voice smooth, almost fond, echoing through the trees. After all, it's a mating run. Mikhail ran faster. I like chasing you. Stop talking. This had officially stopped being a game. Mikhail vaulted over a fallen log, spun mid-run, and threw a knife without slowing down. The blade sliced clean through the air. And Victor dodged it. Effortlessly. Good aim, Victor praised. Another knife. Your form is perfect. Another. You're adorable when you're trying to kill me. This is not adorable. This is attempted murder. I know. Mikhail climbed a tree. Fast, precise, gone within seconds. He perched high on a branch, holding his breath, listening. Footsteps. Closer. Still unhurried. Still calm. Mikhail peeked down and nearly fell. Victor was already there, looking up at him, smiling. Found you. What do you mean, found me? Victor tilted his head slightly. You're loud. I was silent. You were trying. Go away. Never. Mikhail dropped from the tree and ran again. Faster now. Harder. Desperate. This was ridiculous. This was humiliating. This was... Arms wrapped around him. From behind. Solid, warm, unyielding. Mikhail froze. No. No, no. Victor buried his face into Mikhail's neck, breathing him in slowly, like he'd just found something sacred, something his entire existence had been built to chase. Caught you. Mikhail's chest heaved, adrenaline still spiking. And then something shifted. A scent. Subtle, deep, warm. It curled around him, wrapped into his senses, sinking into his bloodstream like quiet fire. His racing heart calmed. What did you just do? Mikhail muttered, voice tight. Scented you, Victor replied softly. Just a little. Mikhail's fingers twitched. I hate you. I know, Victor murmured against his skin. You'll get over it. From a safe distance away, hidden behind a bush, Leonid and Lev were watching. With popcorn. Should we intervene? Leonid asked, completely serious. Lev chewed thoughtfully. In what? The kidnapping or the flirting? Leonid considered that. Good point. Back in Victor's hold, Mikhail finally moved. Elbow to the ribs. Sharp. Precise. Victor didn't let go. I am going to kill you. I'd die happy. That's not romantic, that's stupid. Maybe. Mikhail went still. How long did that take? 2 minutes. I hate everything. When Victor finally released him, it wasn't to restrain him. It was to kneel. Right there in the dirt. In front of him. Like it was the most natural thing in the world. I win. Mikhail stared down at him, breathing uneven, hair messy, eyes still burning with defiance. And something else. Something quieter. Something he refused to acknowledge. This doesn't mean anything. It means everything, Victor said simply. And just like that, it began. If Mikhail thought things were insane before, he had severely underestimated Viktor Volkov. Because now Victor was courting him. Officially. Openly. Publicly. The entire underworld knew within hours. And Victor made sure of it. The first gift arrived that same evening. A bouquet. Mikhail narrowed his eyes at it. Why is it dripping? Symbolism, Victor replied. Mikhail pulled one flower out. It was a knife, still stained with blood. You killed someone. They were on your father's hit list. That doesn't make this romantic. It does to me. You need help. The second gift. A set of custom weapons. Perfectly balanced, beautifully crafted, each engraved with his name. Mikhail ran his fingers over the metal, trying very hard not to feel anything about it. You're insane. Yes. This is useful. I know. I'm keeping them. Victor smiled softly. Of course you are. The third gift. An entire rival faction wiped out overnight. Mikhail found out over breakfast. You did what? They were planning to move against you. So you murdered them? I removed a problem. Mikhail stared at him, then pointed his fork at him. This is not courting. This is a crime spree. Victor tilted his head. You say that like it's a bad thing. Back outside. Leonid rubbed his face. He just committed mass murder as a love confession. Lev nodded. At least he's consistent. Should we also confess like that? No. The days passed. The chaos didn't stop. But something else started to change. Small things. Subtle things. Dangerous things. Mikhail noticed. He noticed that Victor never forced him to stay in a room. Never touched him unless Mikhail initiated contact. Or tried to stab him. Never crossed the invisible line Mikhail kept drawing between them. He noticed the way Victor watched him. Like Mikhail was the center of his world. Like everything Victor did, every decision, every move, somehow came back to him. Why? Mikhail asked one night suddenly. Victor looked up from where he was, of course, cleaning Mikhail's boots again. Why what? Why me? It slipped out before he could stop it. A rare crack. A dangerous question. Victor stilled. For a moment, the room felt different. Quieter. He looked up slowly. And for once, there was no teasing, no humor. Just something deep. Something honest. Because it's always been you. Mikhail's chest tightened. He clicked his tongue, looking away. That's stupid. Maybe. You're still insane. I know. Mikhail didn't say anything else. But later that night, when Victor wasn't looking, he didn't pull his foot away immediately when Victor reached for it. And that was the first sign that something inside him was starting to crack. Chapter 3. Truth, Love, and Chaos. Months passed, and against all logic, reason, and basic survival instincts, Mikhail Sokolov did not escape. Not because he couldn't, but because things had changed. Slightly. Subtly. Dangerously. Are you seriously still here? Sergei Sokolov, head of the Sokolov family, stared at his son sitting comfortably in the enemy Don's mansion like he owned the place. Mikhail didn't even look up from where he was sharpening his knife. Yes? You were kidnapped. Yes. You're supposed to hate him. I do. Then why are you drinking his wine? Mikhail took a slow sip. Because it's expensive. Sergei closed his eyes. Across the room, Victor stood quietly, hands behind his back, watching Mikhail like he was witnessing something sacred. Sergei noticed. He's staring again. I know, Mikhail muttered. Do something about it. I tried. He likes it. Victor smiled faintly. The Sokolov family was not handling this well. At all. Let me get this straight, one of Mikhail's uncles said, pacing aggressively. The man who is supposed to be our greatest enemy. Yes. Kidnapped you. Yes. And instead of killing you. Yes. He's courting you? Mikhail nodded, with alarming dedication. And you're allowing it? Mikhail finally looked up, expression unimpressed. I tried to kill him. And? He called me pretty. Silence. We're losing this war, the uncle whispered. Meanwhile, Leonid and Lev were also suffering. Boss smiled today, Lev said. He smiles every day, Leonid replied flatly. Wider than usual. That's worse. Back in Victor's private quarters, Mikhail sat on the edge of the bed, arms crossed, staring at Victor. Explain something to me. Victor looked up immediately. Anything. Why me? Again. But this time, he didn't brush it off. This time, Victor didn't answer immediately. He just watched him, like he was deciding something. Something important. Something long overdue. Do you remember senior year? Victor asked quietly. Mikhail frowned. Why are we talking about school? Do you remember, Victor continued, the boy who used to sit in the back corner? Glasses, messy hair, always reading? Mikhail blinked. The nerd? A pause. Yes. You mean the one who kept getting bullied? Yes. The one I had to save every other week? Victor smiled softly. You didn't have to. I wanted to. Silence. Something shifted. Mikhail narrowed his eyes. Why are you bringing him up? Victor exhaled slowly. Then, I was him. For a moment, nothing happened. No reaction. No words. Just silence. You're joking. I'm not. You expect me to believe that you… Mikhail gestured wildly. Were that scrawny, quiet, glasses-wearing? Yes. No. Yes. No. Yes. Flashback. The classroom had always been loud. Too loud. But in the back corner, it was quiet. A boy sat there, head down, glasses slipping slightly as he read. Unnoticed. Ignored. Exactly how he preferred it. Until, hey, freak! The book was knocked out of his hands. Laughter followed. The boy didn't react. Didn't fight back. Didn't even look up. Not yet. Because he didn't need to. Not when… Move! A voice cut through the noise. Sharp, cold. The bullies turned and immediately stepped back. Mikhail Sokolov stood there, hands in his pockets, expression bored. Pick on someone your own size, he said lazily. Or what? Mikhail tilted his head slightly. Smiled. Try me. They didn't. They left. Quickly. The boy in the corner finally looked up. Their eyes met. And something clicked. You're annoying, Mikhail had said later, dropping into the seat beside him. Why? You don't fight back. I don't need to. Mikhail snorted. You definitely do. A pause. Thank you. Mikhail shrugged. Don't mention it. Lunches became a routine. Quiet. Simple. Mikhail talking, complaining, threatening people. The boy listening. Watching. Memorizing. One day. I'm leaving. Mikhail looked up sharply. What? Family business. That's vague. It has to be. Mikhail frowned. You're not coming back? No. Silence. Something uncomfortable settled in his chest. That's stupid. Probably. Mikhail clicked his tongue, looking away. Whatever. Do what you want. A pause. Then, if anyone marries you, the boy said quietly, voice steady in a way it had never been before, it'll be me. Mikhail blinked, then laughed. Yeah, sure, you in what army? The boy didn't answer. He just watched him, like a promise had just been made. Present. Mikhail stared at Victor. Long. Hard. Searching his face. You're serious? Yes. You're that nerd? Yes. I saved you? Yes. I liked you. Victor froze. What? Mikhail stood abruptly. Walked toward him. Fast. And then grabbed him. Pulled him into a tight, bone-crushing hug. You idiot, Mikhail muttered against his shoulder. Victor didn't move. Didn't breathe. Didn't dare. I liked you too. Everything. Stopped. Then Mikhail pulled back just enough and kissed him. Hard. Sharp. possessive, like he was making up for lost time. Victor made a small, almost broken sound against his lips. When they pulled apart, Mikhail looked just as grumpy as ever. Don't make a big deal out of it. Victor smiled. Too wide. Too soft. Too gone. I won't. A pause. Then, I had a plan, you know, Victor said suddenly. Mikhail raised an eyebrow. That's concerning. I was going to end the rivalry, properly. Ask for your hand. Like a normal person? Yes. And? Victor looked away slightly. You agreed to a blind date. Silence. So you kidnapped me. Yes. That was your solution. Yes. Mikhail stared at him. Then, laughed. Actually laughed. Bright, sharp, real. You're unbelievable. I know. Then suddenly, Mikhail leaned in, pressed closer, and released his scent. Soft, warm, claiming. Victor froze. Completely. Mikhail! Shut up, Mikhail muttered. My family forced the date. What? I was going to reject it, like all the others. Why? Mikhail rolled his eyes. Because I already like someone. Victor's breath caught. Who? Mikhail smirked. Some nerd. Victor was smiling. Actually smiling. Like the world had just been handed to him. And then, Mikhail grabbed his ear. Twisted. Hard. Ow. That's for kidnapping me. Worth it. Mikhail twisted harder. Still worth it. You're insane. You love me. Unfortunately. Outside. Leonid blinked. Did the boss just get his ear twisted? Lev nodded slowly. And he looks happy about it. We're definitely in the wrong profession. Inside. Mikhail shoved Victor back slightly, arms crossed again, expression returning to its usual annoyed state. Don't think this changes anything. It changes everything, Victor said softly. I still might kill you. I'd die happy. Stop saying that. But this time, Mikhail didn't pull away when Victor stepped closer. Didn't resist when Victor reached for his hand. Didn't stop him. And Victor held it like it was the most precious thing he'd ever been given. War ended. Rivalry shattered. Chaos remained. And somehow, between knives, threats, and terrible life choices, they had found each other again. Chapter 4, Marriage, Baby and Mafia Queen Era. A year. It had been exactly 1 year since the day Mikhail Sokolov was kidnapped, and somehow ended up willingly standing at the altar. Life was strange. The wedding was nothing short of ridiculous. Lavish didn't even begin to cover it. A private cathedral, draped in black and gold, crystal chandeliers, armed guards standing beside floral arrangements that probably cost more than small countries. Mafia leaders from across the world had gathered. Some curious, some terrified, all confused. Because today, two rival empires were becoming one. The families. The Sokolov family, Mikhail's side. Sergei Sokolov, Mikhail's father, head of the Sokolov Bratva. Irina Sokolova, Mikhail's mother, elegant but sharp-tongued. Dmitry Sokolov, Mikhail's uncle, aggressive and dramatic. Anya Sokolova, Mikhail's younger cousin, chaotic observer. The Volkov family, Victor's side. Alexei Volkov, Victor's father, former Don, now semi-retired but terrifying. Natalia Volkova, Victor's mother, graceful, observant, already adores Mikhail. Maxim Volkov, Victor's uncle, strategist, amused by everything. Katya Volkova, Victor's younger sister, dramatic and obsessed with romance. At the center of it all stood Viktor Volkov, dressed in black, sharp and immaculate, looking like a man who had already won everything he had ever wanted. Because he had. His expression, soft, bright, completely gone. Alexei leaned toward Maxim. He looks unstable. Maxim nodded. He's in love. Worse. And then, Mikhail walked in. Equally stunning. Equally dangerous. Face set in his usual annoyed, unimpressed expression. Like he had been dragged here against his will. Irina whispered, "Why does he look like he's attending an execution?" Dmitri muttered, "Because he would prefer that." Anya leaned forward excitedly. "He's definitely enjoying this internally." And she was right. If anyone looked closely, very closely, they would notice the slight lift at the corner of Mikhail's lips, the way his steps didn't hesitate, the way his eyes went straight to Victor. Internally, he was absolutely dancing. "You're late," Victor said softly as Mikhail reached him. "I considered not coming." "You would have." "I know." A pause. Then quietly, "You look good." Victor blinked, smiled. "You always do." "Shut up." Behind them, Katya clutched Natalia's arm. "They're flirting." Natalia smiled calmly. "They always are." The ceremony was quick, efficient, deadly serious, except for the fact that both families looked like they were attending a peace treaty disguised as a wedding. Which they were. "I now pronounce you," Mikhail grabbed Victor's collar and kissed him. Hard. Before the officiant could even finish. Irina sighed. At least he didn't stab him. Sergei nodded. "Growth?" "Impatient," Victor murmured against his lips. "Don't push it." And just like that, the war ended. Domestic life, aka chaos, but married. Marriage did not change them. Not really. Mikhail was still a menace. Victor was still obsessed. "You're staring again." "I'm married to you. I'm allowed." "You're creepy." "You love me." "You're, unfortunately." Family dinners became a battlefield. "Mikhail, eat properly," Irina said. "I am eating." "You're glaring at the food." "It started it." Across the table, Natalia sipped her tea. "He's adorable." Sergei pinched the bridge of his nose. "We lost." Alexei watched Victor cleaning Mikhail's shoe after getting kicked. "Is this necessary?" "Yes," Victor said calmly. Maxim leaned back. "Let him. It's entertaining." "Boss," Leonid said one day, watching in disbelief, "should we also start cleaning shoes after getting kicked?" Victor didn't even look up. "Only if it's Mikhail." "Understood." Lev sighed. "We are never getting promoted." At night, things were quieter. Softer. Not less intense, just different. Mikhail would complain. Victor would listen. Mikhail would threaten him. Victor would kiss him. Mikhail would pretend to hate it. Victor would pretend to believe that. And slowly, their world settled. 5 months later, the meeting was intense. Sergei and Alexei sat on opposite sides discussing territory. Dmitri was arguing loudly. Maxim was calmly correcting him. Mikhail stood at the head of the table, glaring. "I said no," he snapped. "Try again, and I'll—" He stopped. Swayed. Irina stood immediately. "Mikhail?" Victor was already beside him. "Mikhail!" "Don't start," Mikhail muttered. And then collapsed. The next time he opened his eyes, he was in bed. Annoyed. Surrounded. "Why is everyone here?" Irina sat beside him. Natalia stood calmly nearby. Sergei and Alexei were both present, looking equally serious. Dmitri paced. Katya hovered. Anya looked excited. Dr. Elena stood at the foot of the bed, calm as ever. "Congratulations," she said. Mikhail narrowed his eyes. For what?" A pause. Then, "You're pregnant." Silence. Mikhail sat up. Slowly. Dangerously. "Victor." Victor was already tearing up. "Our heir." "I will end you." Katya gasped. "There's going to be a baby." Anya. "I'm going to teach it chaos." Sergei. "It's already doomed." Alexei quietly. "This is acceptable." Natalia smiled. "It's perfect." Chaos. Pure chaos. Mikhail buried his face in his hands. I hate all of you. Victor sat beside him carefully. I love you. Not helping. Family era, also known as forced peace. If the wedding ended the rivalry, the baby destroyed it completely. Did he eat? Irina asked. Yes, Natalia replied. Is he resting? No, Victor answered. I'm fine, Mikhail snapped. Stop hovering. You're not fine, Sergei said. You're carrying my grandchild. Our grandchild, Alexei corrected. We're sharing now? You agreed to peace. I regret it. Dmitri tried to bring weapons as gifts. Irina slapped his arm. Not near the baby. Maxim laughed. Let him try. Mikhail was pampered. Constantly. Against his will. I don't need help. You do, Irina and Natalia said together. I don't. You fainted. I tripped. You were standing still. Details. Despite everything, he didn't push them away. The birth. The day came. And the mansion descended into chaos. Why is this happening to me? You're doing great, Victor said, holding his hand. I will kill you after this. I know. Irina. Push. Natalia. Breathe. Dmitri. Should I threaten someone? Sergei. Sit down. Alexei. Silence. Hours later, a cry filled the room. It's a boy, Dr. Elena announced. Katya screamed. Anya clapped. Sergei visibly relaxed. Alexei nodded once. Leonid blinked rapidly. We have a baby boss now. Lev nodded. We're doomed. Victor held the child like he was holding the universe. Mikhail, exhausted, glared weakly. Give him here. Victor immediately obeyed. Mikhail looked down at the baby. Small. Fragile. His name will be Leon. He better not be annoying. Victor smiled. He'll be perfect. Like me? Exactly like you. Poor child. Months later. The throne room. Mikhail sat on the main seat. Relaxed. Dangerous. Baby Leon on his hip. Sergei and Alexei stood nearby, no longer rivals but allies. Irina and Natalia sat together, watching proudly. Dmitri and Maxim argued quietly in the corner. Katya and Anya hovered near the baby. Reject the deal, Mikhail said flatly, or I'll reject your existence. The room went silent. Victor stood beside him. Watching. Soft. Devoted. Mikhail adjusted the baby Leon slightly. Touch my kid, he said calmly, and I'll kill you. The man nodded frantically. Victor leaned closer. Marry me again. Mikhail didn't even look at him. We are already married. Then I'll marry you twice. You're insufferable. You love me. Unfortunately. The baby made a small sound. Mikhail softened instantly. Victor watched. Like he always did. And in a world built on blood and power, they ruled it. Together. Chaotic. Terrifying. In love.